Hey there, welcome to the program. Joining me tonight, President of the National Farmers Federation, Fiona Simson, Shadow Home Affairs Minister, Kristina Keneally, Minister for International Development in the Pacific, Seselja, legal scholar and citizenship expert, Rubenstein, and joining us from the West, Perth breakfast radio host Gareth Parker on the other side of that big border. Please make all of them feel welcome. Let's go straight to far north Queensland tonight, where tourism has been hit particularly hard, of course. We're joined by two tourism operators, Alan Wallish and Andrea Cameron, who are standing by in Cairns tonight. Guys, thanks so much for joining us on the program. Big announcement today from the federal government for your sector. I know that you're happy with some of the news, but you've really been impacted pretty heavily by the loss of the international market. Andrea, how's your business coping? How much have you lost? How many staff have you had to let go?
Look, my business, obviously like everyone else's, has been absolutely decimated. Normally I'd be running 42 tours a week. Now I'm down to 6 a week if I'm lucky. I've only got one staff member left. I've had to let everyone else go. So although today's announcement has been encouraging, it's still not going to be enough.
And Alan, I think you've currently got 18 staff on JobKeeper. You had 34 staff pre-COVID. What happens to those 18 staff that are on JobKeeper when it ends? As things stand, can you keep them going?
Well, we will. I mean, I need those 18 staff to actually run the business. They're my key staff, who with me now for, some of them have been with me for 15 years, so I'm not letting them go anywhere. Yeah, obviously the end of JobKeeper is certainly a financial hit, and we're hoping that there's the announcement today with the vouchers, people wanting to come up to Cairns so that we can look after you, show you a great holiday, and the interest-free loans will just help us get through a few more months while things start to sort themselves out, I guess.
So I'm just interested in that line about a few more months. Obviously, there's some forecasts that it could be a year, more than that, before we see the international market come back. Can you see a way through to the other side of this currently, notwithstanding the announcements today?
Yeah, look, this is the thing that everybody needs to realise, is that we're probably 12, 18 months, 24 months away from getting any sizeable international tourism anywhere in Australia, and particularly up here where tourism was really 70% of our market. When people plan holidays overseas, they don't just travel the following Monday. You know, they put 6 months into it, 12 months, etc. So we really need a strong Australian market to get behind travelling in Australia, particularly coming to areas like here, Cairns, where we can show you a fantastic holiday, and support our small operators so that we can get through this really amazing time that we find ourselves in.
So, Alan, what's your question for the panel tonight, for the government particularly?
My question to the panel would be, we were reaching a cliff at the end of March. We're pretty much there now. These incentives are certainly helpful, but we're going to hit another cliff come September. So do we have some concrete plans as we go forward until the international market can find its way back into Australia?
Zed.
Well, thank you very much, Alan and Andrea, for the question, and I had the great opportunity to visit Cairns just a week or so ago and met with a number of the businesses there, and it's fair to say we understand, and I know Dan Tehan and the Treasurer and others have been going to places like Cairns and hearing from businesses who are doing it tough. And one of the things, I guess, as we've been grappling with the great challenge of the COVID crisis, both the health crisis and then the economic crisis, has been we've always sought to have very, very strong levels of support, targeted support, and obviously you're aware of things like JobKeeper and JobSeeker and a range of supports for small business cash flow that have been in the economy and have seen large chunks of the economy starting to really come back, and there's been some really, really positive signs in the last few months, but we're very aware of the great challenges that are in some of our particular regions, and Cairns, of course, is one of those regions that does rely on international tourism, that even when we look at domestic tourism, of course, is a flying destination. And that was one of the strong messages I got when I was in Cairns.
So just to be clear, though, given all the fanfare today, the ministers standing in front of aeroplanes, all the noise, you understand that for these businesses, this is not certainty. I mean, if they're down to 20% of their operating capacity currently, these cheap flights and some of the loans, it's not necessarily going to see them through, is it?
Well, let me go through the measures, because I think that there's a lot in this, and one of the very strong messages we were receiving, not just in Cairns but in other tourism-dependent areas, was the need to get people flying to those areas again, because when you get them on those planes, and let's face it, if you're going to go to Alice, or you're going to go to Broome, or you're going to go to Cairns and such places, most people are going to need to fly in order to get there. So by halving the cost of getting there, we will provide a lot of impetus for Australians to be travelling. Remember, these have suffered because...
So you do think it's enough?
Well, I'm not going to say it's enough. I'm going to say that it is a very substantial package, along with the support for the aviation industry, along with the extension of the small and medium enterprise loan scheme, and all of the other supports we've been putting into the economy. And what we've said all the way through, Hamish, is that and I think we've had a good record of this, we will do what is needed and we will adjust to circumstances as they go forward. So I think we will see a lot of Australians taking advantage of this. There are a lot of other factors that will go. There are a lot of other factors that will go to the success of it, because people need to have that confidence. So as we see vaccine rollouts,
we are going to get to that,
sure,
Kristina.
But the borders won't close is another important factor as well.
Look, Hamish, let's be clear. We welcome any support, but what was announced today is too little and it's too late. You know, for tourism operators like Andrea and Alan, they've been suffering for months, and JobKeeper has been sustaining them. And I hope people do take up the cheap flights, but the fact of the matter is it's unevenly distributed. You know, it's lucky if you're in one of the locations that gets the cheap flights. What if you're a tourism operator in an area that doesn't? What if you're one of the 1 million Australians who's currently on JobKeeper? Come the end of March, these 1 million of our fellow Australians are going to be left behind by the Morrison government.
And I think the other aspect is, what is the impact in terms of all of Australia? What is the benefit to all Australians, and how much is the government sharing with us who is actually going to benefit? Perhaps there are lots of women who have shared the disproportionate load of childcare who need a holiday and would like to take that up because of the extra effort that they've had during COVID. But there's also a reference to Australians taking this up. The 30,000 Australians overseas who are not able to even get into the country are not going to be able to take this up.
Gareth Parker, you're in Western Australia. I think there's one location amongst those included in these cheap flights by the federal government. And for many Australians, getting to WA just isn't really even possible currently. How do you look at it from where you sit?
Well, the one location you speak of is Broome in the Kimberley, and it's a beautiful place, but at the moment it's sort of full because West Australians are holidaying there because they can't go overseas, and I don't think that there's the confidence to travel outside of the state because you're never quite sure when a border might be closed or when the rules might be changed and forcing them into quarantine. So I think that's actually the biggest issue. Like, Australians want to go on a holiday. I'm convinced about that. I would love to go on a holiday. I haven't got on a plane since November 2019, and it's hard to see when the next time I will because of that confidence issue. So we need to get some national consistency around when a border will be closed, when quarantine rules will be changed. And I know that the hard border's been super popular here in WA, but I think the time to move beyond that is pretty much arrived. And for the tourism operators, right, they are affected in really different ways. If you're running accommodation in Western Australia in the southwest, 2 hours drive from Perth, you're really, really busy because you've got a captive market. But if you're running a tour like Andrea is, then you're really reliant on people coming from overseas because locals don't tend to go on tours. So the impacts are really different depending on the type of tourism business that you operate. And what you really need is the movement of people to come back.
I want to bring in two people in our audience who are around the tourism sector, Lisa Mann and Ashley Korsman. You run a company called Corjo. Many people will have used your products. What do you make? What do you do?
We import and wholesale travel accessories, so things that people take mostly when they go overseas. So adapter plugs, money belts, neck pillows, those kind of things. And
how much is your turnover down by at the moment?
We're down over 90%.
Okay, and so you've kept some staff on because of JobKeeper, is that right?
That's right.
Yep.
And
because we love our staff.
Obviously you love your staff. What happens to them once JobKeeper ends?
Some more will have to go, unfortunately. There are some key staff that we will keep on, but they're working significantly reduced hours, and we really worry for them how they're going to be able to continue to support their families.
So are you wondering why you're not included in measures for the sector that you're part of?
Sure. And it's not really just about us. There's a huge swathe of industry that's international travel dependent. So think about airport retail stores, duty-frees, luggage stores, luggage and travel accessory companies like us. Without international travel, there's really no business.
Gareth Parker, do you think it's too soon then to be ending JobKeeper?
Well, what I think is that the key to helping businesses like Corjo, and you make excellent, or you import excellent Nick pillows, thank you, I think I've got 3 of them, but the key is to get people moving again, isn't it? We need to get people through the airports. That's actually the key to rebuilding the business. Now, the government's had a role, an unprecedented role really, in trying to support the incomes of businesses who, through absolutely no fault of their own, have been wrecked by this pandemic. But the solution, I think, is not endless government subsidy, it's try and get people moving again. And this is where I think that the vaccine is so important, and I think that we need to change our thinking about what constitutes success. And easy to say when it's not my job on the line, and I feel enormous sympathy for you guys in trying to make these heartbreaking decisions to let go of loyal employees. But the key to getting it all going again is getting people moving again, and that's how you rebuild the business.
And a risk-based approach, Hamish, to how we lock down. You know, we may well see, again, lockdowns. I hope not. We're going through, it feels too good to be true at the moment. But we can't just keep shutting whole states down if there's an outbreak somewhere.
But hang on, I mean, Gareth Parker's virtually in a different country. He's in Western Australia.
I think I'm allowed to talk to him, but it's just as well he's virtual.
Are they ever going to open that border again?
Yeah, of course. I mean, look, let's be real. It's open right now to every state except for Victoria, where it's open, but there's a requirement that you've got to quarantine for 14 days until, I think it's changing on the 15th of March. So what's
but
that?
We're all
That's
here
2
in
days
Victoria.
after the state election. No, I get it. Trust me, I get it. I think, look, it was really important 12 and 10 and 9 months ago when we didn't know what we were dealing with. I personally, and this is not a popular view in my home state, but I think that the border arrangements have gone on for too long, and I think they're too risk averse. And look, the Premier, to his credit, he's going to win an amazing election victory on Saturday. And he says himself that he's taking an extremely cautious approach. For mine, it's too cautious, and there are consequences if you do want to travel, or if you do need to travel. If you don't need to travel and your whole life's here in WA, then you're very thankful that the virus isn't here and life goes on almost completely unaffected.
Kim Rubenstein, the truth is it's been incredibly popular in places like Western Australia.
It has indeed. It really does take us back to the turn of the century, with protectionism running really strong in terms of the different colonies of the time and what the struggles were at the framing of the Constitution. But there was a very clear sense that we were creating a national Commonwealth, and there would be a recognition that each sovereign state would still have its own capacity to protect specific interests to the state, but not in a way that was discriminatory or protectionist. And this is the fine line that it would be very hard, I think, for any Premier now with the changed health conditions to maintain that they were doing it proportionally to the health needs of their community.
But Mark McGowan in WA, who looks like he's going to be swept to victory at this weekend's election again, is saying that he would like to keep border controls in place longer term to keep methamphetamines out of the state. Is that likely
the High
to hold
Court
up?
has more power over that than the people of Western Australia in terms of re-electing, so that if he sought to continue to do that, there would be, without doubt, challenges to the lawfulness of that, constitutionally speaking.
And just on that point, he sort of walked it back almost within hours because he got a backlash here in WA. And they're now talking about expanded police search powers at the road borders, which is a pretty different position to saying, oh, we're going to keep hard borders to keep meth out indefinitely. So I think even he realised he'd gone too far there.
And Hamish, it's not just the people, it's the goods too. You know, when we had trouble getting people's food on the shelves and the big toilet paper lack of supply, it was because we couldn't get the things across the borders, because everything was shutting down. And while we have that, it's not that we don't produce enough stuff here in Australia, we produce heaps. But when you're stopping people, when you're stopping goods moving across the borders, then it creates a huge amount of issues for people like Corjo. So that's what we have to focus on. We have to focus on, let's going forward in this new paradigm now. How can we do it? How can we be sensible? How can we be risk-based? But how can we actually keep Australia moving, letting people make their monies and keep people in jobs?
Zed, can the federal government force this issue?
in terms of state borders?
Yeah.
No, but we have.
Well, you said you tried and then you gave up.
Well,
Well, I mean, what do you mean, no, you can't?
sorry.
Have you read the Constitution?
Sorry.
We're a federation.
Sorry, so your view on the WA hard border would have been that the Commonwealth could have just passed a piece of ledge and that
My
would have been
my view is
what
that
you
at
were
the
suggesting?
very beginning of all
or when
of this,
Victoria had its border
or
closed?
when New South Wales or Tasmania or South Australia, the Commonwealth government absented themselves from this conversation. They abandoned
that's not right.
state borders.
You would have
They
had us-
abandoned us.
You would have had us
to our-
override the states on
Christina,
Have you
that's
read
not
the
closures.
Constitution? We are
Christina,
not
with
But you were never
states.
calling for that. So
We're
this
not
is now a
six
new
countries.
position from the Labor
No, in
Party.
fact, we have been consistently
So you would have had us
saying-
override WA,
consistently
Victoria,
saying-
other states and territories.
No,
when they
you
were-
should
when
have
they were
been
closed
part of
down.
the conversation
We were
and
part
part
of
of
the
the...
Christina,
No, you weren't.
Christina, can I
You
give
had
you
a
the WA
national
perspective
cabinet.
here?
Let's just
Sorry,
let Gareth Parker
Gareth
in.
wanted to make a point.
I would love to give you the WA perspective on this, Kristina, because the federal government were part of the debate and they got their heads absolutely shot off by the citizens of Western Australia. And so they took a political calculation and they thought, Barleys, we're not going to win this one, we're going to withdraw.
Yeah.
And because the politics are too difficult for us. And it's the same thing that happened in Queensland.
And we have the gift of a constitutional
So-
expert here, Kim.
Yes, so that's politics versus the constitutionality of this, because the federal government has a constitutional right to intervene in
Yes.
any matter that deals with a constitutional issue. So in the Clive Palmer case, they could have been a participant. They started being a participant and withdrew because of a political calculation rather than a constitutional calculation, that it was not in their political interest, or that's what it appears to be. But constitutionally speaking, the Commonwealth has the capacity to intervene on any constitutional question.
So what does that look like?
But it's not up to
Wants
us
to
to
do
make
that.
the ruling of the High Court on,
No,
on
of
the
course.
Constitution.
But it is up to you to show leadership. I don't
is
believe
your,
that John
is your argument we
Howard
should have
or
overridden
Malcolm
the states
Turnbull
and we would have
or-
had the power to do that?
I think you should have been part of the conversation,
part of the
showing no, you
conversation.
weren't.
We
the
absolutely
Prime
were.
Minister
But
absented
you-
himself. He threw up his hands,
He
said
set up a
it's all
national
too
cabinet.
hard.
He has led this
The
country
National
through.
Cabinet.
He has led this
Give
country.
me a
I know
break.
Anthony Albanese doesn't like it because he wasn't part of it. And that's why it
No,
wasn't
we
a
don't
national
like
cabinet.
it because it's literally the premiers came together, told the Prime Minister what they were going to do, and then he went out and
Let's
announced
take a
it.
step.
That is national
Let's take
cabinet.
a step back for just one moment, if we could. We can look at all of the issues that we're grappling with right now, but take a step back and look right around the world and think, where would you rather be during this last 12 or 18 months
New South
than in
Wales.
Australia? Where would you rather have been than Australia? Would you rather be in Europe? Would you rather be in the United States or Canada? Virtually nowhere in the world has gotten through this as well as we have. We must have made some good decisions. We must have had some good leadership. Yes, we have worked with the states and territories,
Dan,
and our economy is recovering very strongly.
Anastasia,
We've
Mark.
saved a hell of a lot of lives, and I think, talking down every decision, I just don't think stacks up.
We in Victoria heard lots of criticism of our state government over COVID hotel quarantine. However, there's been scant disapproval from the media over the many missteps from the federal government, causing the late arrival of the COVID vaccine. Many countries are well ahead of us, and we're now facing winter. My local Melbourne doctor is still waiting on supplies. Why not the same outrage about this disorganised response?
Kim Rubenstein.
Look, I think there's a general sense that we need some leadership here in terms of consistency of approach to looking after the entire community. I mean, the quarantine framework is another aspect of this that hasn't been brought in, but in terms of the actual vaccination, that together with an enlarged quarantine framework would be opening up the economy even more. My last thought in relation to our discussion about, where does this fit in the economy is linked into the health issues, and ultimately we want the leadership to be coordinating the health issues with the economy, because then the economists surely can predict and say, we need this stimulus for a certain number of more months before we return to a more normal post-COVID reality. So they're all interlinked in my view.
Gareth, is the federal government over-promising and under-delivering already on the vaccine rollout, do you think?
Well, the numbers say obviously yes, but it's very, very early days. And I think to the question, The reason there's not more outrage is because at the moment people aren't sick. We're in a fortunate position. No one's sick, no one's dying. So among ordinary people, I don't think there's this sort of clamour for the vaccine in a way there would have been if we had a pandemic raging. But I do think it needs to happen, and I think we are. Thank goodness we've got some manufacturing capacity locally, because we've already seen a bit of this attempts from Europe to block the export of the vaccine to Australia, and I sort of understand why, because they've got a much bigger urgent problem right now than we do. That said, if we want to get people moving again, and I think this is the hardest decision for the federal government, is how do they decide when and how to reopen the border? And to Kim's point just then, I actually think if you want to boost national productivity, you could do a lot worse than a massive investment in hotel quarantine nationally to allow many, many more, not just Australians come home, but other people to come here who've tested negative to COVID overseas. So we've got some confidence to get people coming and going again. So I think that's actually what you can do. And just on the vaccine rollout, I think the federal government could do well to spend a lot more time talking to the state health departments who are used to rolling out services. And I think that will be the key, not just through the GPs, they're important, but get it through the state health departments and the hospitals as well.
But it's not only the states, it's also the federal government. It has responsibility over quarantine. It has capacity over the territories. There are businesses out there that are calling to say they would work with government in setting up new quarantine facilities like Howard Springs in the Northern Territory. And if we're living in a world where the pandemic might erupt again, that is a real investment for the continued globalisation positivity that we can get from travel.
Zed, the truth is the rollout is slipping, isn't it? It is behind schedule. We're not getting the vaccines as promised.
Well, the first thing I would say is it is early days. We have well over 1 million doses now in the country, and very soon we will be having our own manufacturing capacity.
Let's be honest here, you're behind schedule.
You said 4 million people would be vaccinated by the end of March. Will that happen?
Well, if I could just finish. We've got over 1 million doses in the country already. We're about to ramp up our own capacity, and we didn't go down the path of emergency approvals for various reasons, one of which is because we've had better control of the pandemic than many other countries. But as we get that national sovereign capability rolling out, which will be happening very soon, you will see very, very quickly it ramp up. So, is it always perfect? No. Are there always
Does
challenges?
Does ramping up mean getting back on track? I mean, will you get back to those original schedules of having most adults done by October?
Well, that is our intent. That is our intent, and if you look at the capacity that will be coming through CSL to ramp up millions and millions of doses, that is our expectation, that is our intent. There are always challenges in rolling these things out early. We've talked about some of the challenges in some of the export restrictions that were imposed in Europe, but we haven't put all our eggs in one basket. We can manufacture, we're procuring from various sources, and I think what you'll see over the next few weeks is that it'll start to roll out far more quickly.
Okay. Hamish, I have to respond to that. I'm sorry.
Very briefly, please.
Very briefly. Prime Minister said we'd be at the front of the queue. We're not. 74 countries were ahead of us. Prime Minister said 4 million of us would be vaccinated by the end of the March. We've only got 3.9 million to go before the end of March.
That sounds like some talking points I've heard before, so let's move on. Let's get to some other issues dominating the national conversation.
Today they confirmed...
Senator Keneally, if I could just ask you to pause there, we're going to move on.
Today they confirmed we would not hit the October deadline.
Okay.
Don't let him get away with that.
The Australian music industry has suffered immeasurably over the last year. To many, it may seem that we're back to pre-COVID business, but the reality is 90% of businesses in my industry are still reliant on JobKeeper. We want to get back to work, but border restrictions, regulations and venue capacities have either forced us to continually reschedule or cancel shows. In light of the most recent announcement for further industry relief promised to the tourism sector, what further relief can we in the music and arts industries expect to receive before we lose the businesses and skills of our industry?
Gareth Parker, do you think some industries like arts have missed out?
Well, I certainly feel for the music industry. They have been obliterated. And again, this is the uneven nature of this, is because whenever you rely on an industry that sees people moving across jurisdictions, they're the ones that have been most affected. On my radio show in Perth, we talked to the bass player for a band that many of your viewers tonight would remember, Jebediah, talking about the reality of what the last 12 months have been like. Yeah. So I think that they are another industry who do need a sort of a similar package to what's been announced by the government today. I don't think ongoing job subsidy forever is it. And we're not just talking about the people who play musical instruments either. We're talking about the lighting people, the sound people, the caterers, all of those, the transport workers, you know, who put these massive, massive tours on, and they work from tour to tour to tour. And those tours are just gone.
Will there be a package then for music and arts?
Well, I can't announce that on behalf of the Arts Minister tonight, so obviously I'll let him speak to that. There has been significant support for the sector, including through things like JobKeeper, but in terms of other targeted support as well. And yes, it's a sector that's absolutely been doing it very tough, but I can't give you an answer on that, on what may be there in the future. I'll leave that to the relevant minister.
Hamish, my understanding is that about roughly a quarter or a third people in the arts and entertainment industry were never eligible for JobKeeper because of the nature of their work. Yet today we had the greatest of ironies that the venue where Paul Fletcher, the arts minister, went to announce his live music his subsidy package last August, that venue closed today. And they said they closed because they were running out of the capacity to stay afloat without JobKeeper, and that was the harsh reality. So we have to be upfront and say this is a sector where we not just risk job losses, but we also risk our own cultural identity if we don't support it. And when we talk about tourism coming back, one of the things tourism comes to is to see live shows in Australia. And so this has got to be part of a holistic approach to supporting arts, entertainment and tourism.
Can I just add there
a very
also,
brief final thought.
Well, the holistic approach has to recognise that we're all citizens, and active citizenship means that you have to have a basic economic base. We didn't get to talk about job seeker, but you need a minimum wage to be able to be real citizens, politically and involved in society. And whether it's job keeper or job seeker, we as a society need to look after everybody to ensure that we're all participants in what we do.
That is all we've got time for tonight. Would you please keep the applause going for Fiona Simson, Kristina Keneally, Seselja, Kim Rubenstein and Gareth Parker. Please.